Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I'm glad to be able to chat with you a little bit.
Thank you. All right. So first question is just kind of the typical, how'd you get to where you're at? What's your background? How did you end up starting this company? Talk us
Yeah,
about that. Yep.
yeah. So I founder CEO out and back to my current job. It's kind of a circuitous way to get here. I didn't like actually intend to. I was in college, for example. I didn't like intend to get into sustainability or anything like that. I was an economics major to begin with during my undergrad, and I just found it to be like nebulous, and so I went and decided to become an environmental economics major because at least it had like some measure of application relative to the science, and I ended up liking it. But it was totally by accident that I ended up falling into that. Then started working at Levi's back in 2000 and I don't even know 7, I guess, which is in the sustainability group because they happened to recruit from that major or whatever that I was at. And then worked there really before there was a sustainability group. Actually, I know it's sort of interesting to talk about it in a different context today, but 15 years ago it was mostly environment, health, and safety with like one hippie who wanted to do something with greenhouse gases, and I happened to have that as my first boss. Anyway, so took that job, did a bunch of really cool stuff there. Levi's is an amazing company. You guys should all be so lucky to get a chance to work there. Great company, great leadership. Um, Ended up going to Ernst & Young, did a little bit of consulting. Turned out that was not for me. Started my first company called Travel Album. It was basically like a visual travel planning mobile app and web application. This is back at like pre-Instagram, just pre-Instagram. That didn't end up working, blew it up. And then my old boss at Levi's ended up being a VP at VF, and I was able to help. He was basically able to help me get a job at VF after Travel Album, and then when I was at VF, I ran the new business models program for them. So basically, like my job was to start little companies for VF, basically. So like they've got a bunch of different brands, and we would start little companies. And the kind of thesis associated with those companies was always what we called user centric, purpose led. Very corporate sounding, but it's what it was. User centric being like these need to make people's lives better, and then purpose led needs to make like the world better. So Recommerce was a big push for us. We started multiple Recommerce businesses, including the North Face's original business, the Eagle Creek business. We started a couple in Europe, multiple rental businesses, some in the United States and then in Europe. It was a lot of work. But basically, I came to the conclusion while I was there doing that work that Recommerce had a tremendous amount of potential in terms of like something that actually truly was user-centric and purpose-led, that it could truly get people to engage with it in a meaningful way on their own accord. And it was clearly going to be a better solution for the environment as it relates to the products that we were selling, but that the brands were never going to do it for real. And there's a very good reason as to why. I can talk a little bit about it too. I don't know. I don't remember all the questions that Beth's going to ask me, but I do believe this is one of them, or at least adjacent to one of them. There was real friction in the context of those brands starting Recommerce businesses, and it basically comes down to whether or not you believe that the product is interchangeable, new and old versions of it, and whether or not you believe that the seller's intent is to get rid of an item or to upgrade that item. And ultimately, it comes down to the brands making the calculation on their end to say, I'm not willing to cannibalize any part of my mainline business. And I watched this happen over and over and over again while I was at VF, and to the point I was just like, screw it, I'm gonna build a P&L that does this right from the get-go. And believe it or not, my former employer determined that was also the case, and so they actually were our first investor, even though I quit, having basically said that they weren't going to ever get real serious about it. They apparently agreed, at least to some degree, with that, and they were able to sort of lean in and say, you know what, like there is a better model for this, and we may have the ability to do it and be part of it, so long as we it's outside of our business. So anyway, that's the whole genesis, really. I guess it's my whole kind of career in a nutshell.
Barruch is not not shy about telling the real story, which is great.
Yeah, well, and and this is one of those things too, where the brands will always have a place to play in the context of e-commerce. They always will, because there's always a user story that somebody will want to engage, where they can offer the kind of best, least path to value that person wants. But ultimately, most people are getting rid of things not because they want to upgrade, but because they want to get rid of it. So it comes down to like, somebody's going to offer you a gift card. You're going to go to Patagonia, and you're going to turn in your Patagonia item for another Patagonia item, because that's all Patagonia is willing to offer you for that item. They're not going to pay you in cash for it. Nor will REI, nor will Arc'teryx. None of them will, actually. Not even ThreadUp. I mean, they're like, none of them are willing to give you cash for that item. And ultimately, what most people want when they're getting rid of things, if you've ever sold anything on a secondary market, is they want to get rid of it. They don't want another version of the thing they just sold. So that's the problem that we basically set out to fix.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about the model, the out and back model specifically.
Yeah. So our model the past 2 years, we've been laser focused on the seller. So basically what it comes down to in Recommerce is there's not like a dearth of demand. There's a lot of people who are out there who want these products, used products. The problem is actually 100% supply. So, normally when you're starting a new business and you have what is effectively unlimited demand, this is like a great thing. And people just say, oh, this is great. We'll get after the market. This is the one market where you can't do that. There's no factory you can call to go make more used stuff. That's not possible. So how do you actually meet demand and supply? That's what we've been focused on. So our model is all about basically making it like super, super easy for people to purge their outdoor gear, and make it so that it's one of those things where the person who's on the sideline right now, who's, call it top of funnel, who maybe was like, these things are just sort of collecting in my closet or collecting in my garage. We can sort of take all of it from them at once, which is why when people sell to us, our average number of items that we buy is closer to like 4 than it is 1. And sometimes people sell us, no joke, like 50 things at a time. And they've just gone through and they've just gotten rid of everything from a whole activity set that they no longer engage in or whatever. And so we've been focused tremendously on making that person's life really, really easy, and making that gear purge something that's just like super simple. And then the big thing is matching up the incentive with that person. So the example I just gave you, somebody's going to sell you 6 pieces of outerwear, not uncommon. They probably don't want 6 pieces of outerwear back. So you have to pay that person in cash, or you've got to find some other incentive that isn't more stuff. Because when you're selling that much gear, your objective is probably not to upgrade at all. Single piece, yes, here and there, you'll get people who will do that. But by and large, people don't sell us one thing. They're kind of purging. And we're perfect for that, because we get rid of it quick, we pay for shipping, and we give them cash so they can turn it into beer or whatever else they want to, buy with that money. So that's our model. The way that we can price these things, though, and we give instant offers on gear, which is also a unique thing. But the way that we price these things is all market-based pricing. So I would argue that we are more a technology company than anything else. That's probably like a song and dance that a lot of Recommerce companies have sang before. But I think that we are more of a technology company than anything else. And most of our technology is focused on monitoring the market for what the last, call it 10 years worth of outdoor gear is selling for. And what that allows us to do is basically, when you go onto our website and you say, I've got, a Patagonia Better sweater, what we call our network of extractors, they go out, they're looking up what these items cost, what they're selling for in the market today, and they're giving you a price predicated on that sale. And so what ends up happening is if demand for the item goes up, our price will go up too. There was a time during COVID actually where we were selling we were buying tents for 50% of MSRP that were 7-8 years old. But the reason why is because they were selling in the market for 120% of MSRP. It was crazy. If you think about the supply crunch that was in the middle of COVID and nobody being able to go anywhere, and everyone's like, I'm going to go camping.
And tents in particular, as I recall, were I mean, because they're made in like 4 factories, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. And I remember tents in particular. I think sleeping bags was another one that was
And
super
backpacks.
trained. Backpacks. Yep.
Yep, all of
Mhm.
them. I mean, there was a time like 12 to 18 months ago where the average Osprey backpack was going for 108% of MSRP.
Yeah. That's super interesting.
Crazy. And Osprey was sold out. And same thing, Big Agnes, I think was like 120 something percent, just insane prices. So we were paying people more because we were selling them for more. And then when the price goes down, we pay people less, which gives us an advantage too, to the extent that you're sort of, when you're selling and shopping, you're always, people think of other brands or retailers as their competitors. Is not the case. Google is basically their competitor. You're like, you know, you're going to look up, okay, how much does this thing go for? How much does it cost? We know what that information is. So when you look up, you know, what can I get for this, or you're looking on eBay to see what can I get for this, we have the capacity to kind of already know what that is, and then give you something reasonable enough where you're like, yeah, but these people are going to pay me cash and they're going to do it like tomorrow, as opposed to me having to list it, take pictures, and do all that. So that's kind of our supply advantage, is that tech stack that's monitoring prices, and then the ability to turn that into an instant cash offer. And on the buy side, I mean, when somebody's buying from us, it's really simple. You know, like we're not really different than like an online Recommerce business. I mean, you buy something from us, it's been cleaned, it's been repaired, but it is used. And, you know, we offer free shipping and free returns, which we get very few returns. But we offer free shipping and free returns, and it's just kind of e-commerce, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so a couple of other questions. What would you say is the biggest challenge you face in your business specifically? Or I guess in general by this type of business model, but it could be something in your business specifically.
Yeah. Recommerce in general is not easy because there's not, at least from a technology perspective, the enterprise tech stacks that you have that drive most e-commerce businesses don't really work for recommerce. By and large, it's because there's not like lots in recommerce, not usually anyway. I guess the North Face and some of the other brands will have lots because they'll have damages that will go across like big swaths of a particular product category. And most of those recommerce businesses, by the way, are damage and distress goods. They're not customer returns. But anyway, like if you're doing that, you might have the capacity to actually like fill a size run, meaning like black, medium, large, extra large, if that's not clear. But anyway, with the kind of recommerce that we do, it's really hard to do that, because like, what's the chances we're going to get, you know,
2 of the same product back?
well, we get 2 of the same product pretty regularly, but like talk about like black, medium, black, large, black, extra large, like that's really, really rare, because just not that they're not out there, but rather it's not easy to find that person. So it's hard to merchandise that. And we're not very good at it either. We're getting better. We're going to keep learning and so on, but like our merchandising is not great right now. And it's because of that problem. So anyway, there's a little bit of that. We've tried different ways of filling it right now. The same network that yields prices for us also yields affiliate listings. So like, even if we don't have it in our warehouse, we'll still show you that item on eBay, on our site, on that product page, so that you can still decide whether you want it. If we find it, we're gonna serve it up. But in that way, we don't really make any money on that, not anything meaningful anyway. So that's definitely a big challenge. And that's a challenge for recommerce generally. This is why you don't see a lot of like non-thrift based recommerce physical stores. Just think of how much merchandise you would need if you couldn't fill size runs. Think of how much merchandise you would need in order to like pull forward a meaningful collection of anything.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to do that in a normal sized store. You really need like a warehouse to get to quorum on units in order to like, okay, I don't have this one in black in medium, but I have this other thing in black and medium, like, and you've got to have so many versions of that. So it's really hard to do recommerce well in a physical store. There are some folks who are doing it, but you need a ton of space, or you need a ton of product. One of the two things is true, so that you can merchandise it. So that's really difficult. The sell side too, just like getting people, we've just scratched the surface. Just scratch the surface of the supply that's out there. I think we're doing a good job from a technology perspective and like bringing forward something that's easy to use that people can just move through super quick and move on with their day. But there's a huge behavior change element that's part of this, that you've got to like keep beating the drum so that people just like remember that, you know, oh yeah, like that thing that's in the back of my garage or whatever that I haven't used in a year, like that's still valuable. A lot of times people are selling us stuff that they've forgotten about.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's difficult to get someone to not only remember that, but then remember at the right time when they're home so they can actually like use the little online tool, blah, blah, blah. We just launched this partnership with Dick's Sporting Goods and Public Lands, and we're talking to a bunch of other retailers about this too, to try to make it easier so that like the friction is like, oh, I don't need to package it. I don't need to print this label. I don't need to go to the post office. I can just like go in my car real quick, drop this thing off, and like, you know, it makes it simpler. But even that, it's like, it's not the magic bullet, or it's helpful, but it's not, you know, it's not going to be the be all end all. People, it's going to take years before people just like remember that they should be selling stuff that they're not using regularly.
Yeah.
So that's really hard. And then that's one of those things where we can help, but like the whole industry, everybody has got to be beating that drum, because just one company doing it's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sort of on that point, I know this is something you and I have talked about in the past, but what do you think is the tipping point to make resale and other kinds of circular business models really finally overtake, or at least become at parity with the traditional extractive model of extract new materials to make new products?
Yeah.
You know, when do you, A, do you see that happening? And B, what do you, if so, or even if it's a, you know, pretty much a pipe dream, what would be required to get us there?
Yeah. Well, you like overtake, I don't think that will happen in the near term. And I'm not sure until we change what people demand, it probably doesn't make sense to either. So like, let me explain, I guess. If you are buying, like, it doesn't make sense to actually resale everything. Just for like the most basic economics, it doesn't pencil out. Like if you, for example, if you're like this t-shirt I'm wearing, this happens to be like a smart wool base layer thing. So this is kind of an expensive t-shirt. Maybe it retails for like $70 or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, or maybe 80, I don't know. This t-shirt barely is expensive enough in that the resale value would be sufficiently high so as to make sense to invest in actually cleaning and potentially repairing it, and the reverse logistics associated with like snowflake management. When I say snowflake, I'm talking about single units, basically like non lots of items. Barely makes sense to do it. And it's a t-shirt, so it's next to skin, so it's probably not going to get nearly as high of a premium as say a tent or a piece of outerwear would. And so the economics of recommerce really break down when you're talking about items with a low MSRP. So like think about in the apparel and fashion space, like think about how many items you own that are $80 or more, and then stack those up against all the ones that are $80 or less.
MSRP of a new product, right?
Yeah, of a new product.
Yeah.
Maybe half your stuff. Like underwear, probably a long way off from being
socks.
Like,
I mean, I remember
like,
talking about this actually, like it's so difficult to make the
basically,
model work. Yeah.
basically all of your staples that you run through regularly that are not that expensive, they're just not gonna pencil out for recommerce. This doesn't mean that it can't have a second life, but you're not gonna resell them. They'll go somewhere else, like you'll give them away or whatever. Or this is really where the downcycling / recycling world can start to play a more meaningful role too. And then there's the whole fast fashion industry. If you think of $80 as being like a core, like a key price point in order to make a viable model out of it, I mean, that's like 2/3 of what's in H&M isn't going to fit the bill on that. So it's really difficult to make like a true, what I'd call closet mind recommerce business work with any of those models. So I'm not sure that like recommerce is even the right solution for every price point. Like I don't believe that's true. So I don't know that overtake is the right way to look at it. Yeah. So, but I think
Or
in
for every
outdoor,
product, right? So talk a little bit more about the next to skin thing, because I don't know if, I don't know if these guys are totally clear on that, but thinking about, things that that people have closer to their bodies are less likely to be something that people will search for as used online.
yeah,
There's just like a perception about it, regardless of whether it's been cleaned or not or whatever.
yeah, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. Yeah. So next to skin is hard to sell. It's easy to buy, but it's hard to sell.
Yeah.
Um, so in that sense, like that whole category is probably not, but there are categories in which Recommerce is likely to play like a meaningful role. And I remember, whatever, 7 or 8 years ago, talking to Nicole Bassett about this, where there's
Real
a
Workshop, another company in the space until recently, but yeah.
recently, yeah.
Yep.
I remember like before she started in earnest that company, we were talking about like, how does Recommerce become a segmentation strategy actually for your core business, which is to say, like, can you service the top of the pyramid, so to speak, from a quality perspective with new goods, and then effectively cycle those back down into lower tiers of price point using Recommerce and other models like leasing and rental and so on, to be able to drive those down funnel consumers, but who are more price sensitive. And I think for some categories, this could totally work. So like hard goods, for example, I mean, you kind of see this anyway. Like this is how people sometimes upgrade, like say skis. They start with like a demo version because they want to test it out for different reasons. They're not doing it for like sustainability purposes potentially. But there are models that just do this supernaturally. Car companies have been doing this forever. Where especially luxury car brands like BMW and Mercedes, like the new stuff goes to the premium customers. They try to get those folks on leases so they can resell it to a lower price point later. Like the whole model is predicated on that, actually. So I think for hard goods and super expensive stuff, it won't be a far leap, and you already kind of see it happening. But most of what we buy, I'm not sure that Recommerce is going to make economic sense for quite some time. At least as the like normal form of how people consume and how people buy stuff. But there are whole classifications of product where barely scratch the surface and could easily create that certified pre-owned type car model.
Yeah. Another comment here is furniture. Yep, that's another great.
Yeah, and Cherish is doing this, and there's a bunch of other folks who are in this space that are working on what I call hard goods, like expensive big stuff.
Yeah.
Basically is what can work really well for this kind of model.
Yeah. What do you do with gear that's donated or sold to you that isn't resellable? So what do you do? Do you just keep it in inventory forever, or what's your process if something's not selling?
We try not to, but it doesn't happen that often. We call that, there's multiple different forms of what we call a fault in the context of our business, a sale fault. So this can be, say somebody says the item is used in excellent, and it turns out it's actually used in good, where it's not just like cosmetic stuff that's wrong with it. Maybe we've got to repair like a hole or something. So that will change the offer. And when the person brings it either into the store or the warehouse, like the software, when the person checking it in says like, oh yeah, this thing's got this hole, like it recalculates the offer, and the person will get a new offer predicated on whatever that damage was. And I mean, literally like handful of times somebody said, okay, I no longer want that offer. The different offer usually is like plenty. They're like, oh yeah, I didn't notice that hole was there. Like, I'm so sorry. Anyway, so that's really easy to deal with. Occasionally, we will get people who vastly overstate the quality of their item, or just outright lie. I mean, you will get some. It does happen where someone's like, this item is new, and you're like,
no,
this is dirty. Like,
yeah.
Like this is definitely not new. And they're like, well, I've never worn it. Like, that's not the question. Anyway. So it definitely does happen. It's not that common, but it does happen. If the item is truly broken and it is not worth repairing, the first thing we will do is, if the item is truly broken, but we can repair it, we will try to repair it and we will not pay the customer. So the customer, there's only a certain amount of damage that the product can have in order for us to still pay them. And if not, they're effectively donating it, and they're usually happy to do that. They're like, yeah, whatever. They know it's broken usually. So they're happy to donate it. If we can repair it, then we will resell it. It's usually a very visible repair though. And it usually is like, we sell it for super cheap in order to try to just basically get it off of our books. That's most of what happens. If the item is truly like busted though, and we can't do anything about it, we will effectively try to donate it to somebody who can actually use it, who can resell it. And we try to do this like at a very kind of, I guess, targeted basis. So for example, like when we get tents that the shell fabrics are just like totally messed up, and tents are really hard to repair, by the way, especially if it's a zipper. They're really difficult to repair, super expensive. There's some things you can fix, but not everything. What we'll do is we'll take the stakes and we'll see if we can donate the stakes to a local group. And then we'll see if the rain fly is still good, we'll keep it because we might get another one that comes in later and we can use that rain fly on a product at another time, kind of thing. And then if with everything else that we can't deal with, if we can't find somewhere to recycle that, unfortunately we have to throw it away. And there's kind of nothing else that we can do about that. We will try to leverage warranties wherever we can too. So if we can get component parts, for example, from someone like Big Agnes who will sell us component parts, it might be good enough that we can repair the item. So we'll do our best, but I mean, if it can't be done, it can't be done.
And what about cases where it's not necessarily something's broken, it's just not selling? Like, do you ever, or is that just not even really an issue in your business?
No, it's an issue. We'll just keep lowering the price, and we may end up taking.
And then eventually it sells. Once it gets
I mean, if you lower the price enough, somebody will buy it. So we just end up losing money on it if that's the case. But or we don't make anything potentially.
Yeah, got it. Okay, and then a follow-up question on this one is, how do you continue to incentivize people to sell their old gear in moments when reselling isn't as abundant, or like, trying to keep that as a bit of the follow-up to what you were saying before, is how do you get people thinking, like, not forgetting that they have this stuff? Do you have any specific initiatives around that?
Yeah, well, you can't really so our business is interesting because we have 2 engagement cycles every season, which is very unique. And this is a reason why a lot of companies are looking at Recommerce actually now, is because it's a very organic version of how you can engage a customer without it having to be always buy, right? Like at some point that message gets saturated. And so it's really nice to have something else to come to market with. We don't really push selling in times when selling doesn't make a lot of sense. Selling in terms of transition seasons is really when things happen. We'll buy more items in the month of May than we will in the 4 months that preceded it. So what we do is we engage with buying, but our follow-ups always have a sell side message to them to kind of keep beating that drum. And I think on the bottom, I can't confirm this for sure, but I'm pretty sure on the bottom of every one of our email communications, there is a reminder on selling. So like content on the best places to go hiking in Colorado. And then like at the bottom, it's always like selling. So you always remind the person, whether they're a buyer or a seller, that selling is an option for them. And I've even seen folks who were buyers become sellers. And I've seen folks who are sellers become buyers, and you see the fluidity between these two groups of people, which is pretty cool to see, like the little ecosystem starting to bud a bit.
We had a seminar at Outdoor Retailer at one point with Rainy Pass Repair on this very topic, which was basically from the perspective of your business or a business like that that's getting a bunch of product back for repair or used product in general. Are you seeing any common trends in terms of like what things fail the most, or like what
big time,
so talk a little bit about and the flip side of that is, what are the sort of design or construction techniques that would be more suitable to circularity or keeping a product in use?
I guess the first thing I would say is the brand you purchase from makes a huge difference. Don't ever cheat yourself of the opportunity to get something that is like super high quality from a brand that cares. There are products that work really well, and then there are products that work really well but also have the same failures as everything else. If everyone's kind of outdoorsy, at least to some degree on this call, some of the stuff I can explain, and this is really predicated on outdoors. I can't speak to the whole like world of apparel, fashion, whatever related to this stuff. But for example, if you're a backpacker, there's two big buckles that matter on your backpack. There's one big buckle that matters, but that's not what I'm about to explain. Will tell you why it breaks. Anyway, there's the top strap buckle that goes over your chest, and there's the bottom buckle. One of these two buckles is made to carry most of the weight. The other one is actually the one that carries most of the weight. And largely it's because people are wearing their packs wrong. We talked to users about this, and one of the things is like the bottom one makes people look kind of fat if you do it tight, because it's carrying all that weight and it's like wrapped around your gut. And so you've got like some fabric that's moving out and it's uncomfortable. And people are like, I don't like this. So what they do is they put a 60-pound pack or a 40-pound pack on their chest, and they clip just right here. It's not enough. So this strap on a backpack is almost, for a pack that's more than 5 years old, is almost always broken. Almost always we have to replace it. And it's because of that misuse actually of the product more than anything. Same thing, you see like the shoulder straps on backpacks, if they're overworn, it's because the person's wearing the pack wrong. Generally that weight should be carried on your lower back, and the straps are to keep it from moving like side to side in a meaningful way, but it's not to carry the weight of the pack. So you see a lot of these user errors, not necessarily from the brands, but the user errors that are driving a lot of these repair issues. The ripstop on the bottom of ski pants is almost ubiquitously somewhat messed up. And it's because when people are walking, they shift the ski boots past each other, and they end up ripping on the inside part. And usually there's a ripstop to stop that, but even that will get messed up. It's like really high quality fleece doesn't pill in the same way that low quality fleece does. So when you look at your outlet product that we get from a lot of the brands, which we do get a lot of outlet product from folks, it'll be pretty badly pilled. And so we've got to fix that. Really high quality fleece though, from like Patagonia, North Face and stuff. I mean, that stuff can be in really, really good shape. For a long period of time, doesn't require a lot of stuff, but yeah, I mean, we've learned a lot, tons about this stuff in terms of what fails. It's super regular. It makes our check-in process really quick because we know exactly where to look. We have parts to fix things now because all the same stuff always breaks, and etc.